educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for coming on to That Will Never Work podcast today. We're going to have some fun about a topic, most of us really don't want to talk about it all, right? But this individual has been relentlessly representing her clients before the IRS and state tax agencies for over 24 years. During that time, she has resolved thousands of clients' personal and business tax debt issues for income, payroll, and sales tax. To say she has handled pretty much any tax debt problem you can imagine is an understatement. Her experience and knowledge have led her to publishing a book called Tax Debt Rule Number 1. There's always a solution that individuals and tax professionals can use as a guide for identifying where they are in the tax debt collection process and the steps they can begin to take to move towards a resolution. A lot of times, as I stated before, as I'm introducing this person, a lot of us don't want to talk about the IRS. We don't want to talk about owing money. And it kind of scares me a little bit. I'm just going to be honest. Shh, don't tell nobody. But, I just want y'all to know that, but I thank y'all very much for listening. And I bring to you Morgan. Morgan, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Maurice. I know it's one of those topics when people ask me, oh, what do you do? I say, well, I kind of pick a fight with the IRS and the state tax agencies for my clients every day. People go, ew. Yeah. You should see them. And then it's always followed by, well, you're a great person for me to keep in mind moving forward. And I'm like, well, you don't want to know me that way if you don't have to, right? But there is this real nasty jacket when it comes to financial struggles, and everybody has them at some point in their life to one degree or another with one debt, whether it's credit card, home loans, student loans, taxes. Everybody has some challenge along the way with some debt that they've got, right? My specialty just happens to be the tax corner of it.
So what made you want to decide to put some boxing gloves to the IRS? Like, what made you want to do that?
It was a happy accident. I've always loved numbers, right? I was a number nerd when I was a little kid. Like math was my favorite class. But as I got older, I liked law. I liked numbers, and I wanted to find something that I could do that kind of mixes everything together. And I ended up answering an ad while I was running a retail shop in Colorado on Boulder's Pearl Street Mall. I answered an ad for an administrative assistant for a company that ended up doing this, right? And I'd never heard of tax debt resolution before, didn't really know what the heck that was. And this is going back 25 years. Pretty amazing since I'm only 35.
Yeah,
right.
But
I happened into this industry where I could really help people who didn't know what to do. Right? They're getting notices from the IRS. They're getting notices from the state. They've got this bill and they become paralyzed with fear over it. I don't know who to talk to. It's one of those hidden, that I put it at the back of my desk drawer because I don't know who I can turn to for help or for answers. And I don't want to tell my friends that I've got this debt. I don't want to tell my next door neighbors, right? Like it's this. Our pride gets in the way of saying to somebody, hey, I've got a problem and I need some help. So who do you turn to? And I became dang good at putting the pieces of the puzzle together and saying, okay, client, here's how much you owe the IRS. Here's how much you owe the state. Let's look at your financial condition and let's work out a solution, because there's always a solution. First thing you have to do is just say, I've got a problem, right?
But that's it's a little intimidating, when you have your, your father, your uncle, you're a little kid and you hear their, hey, come here, voice, right?
Right.
When you're being chastised or whatever else. I think some of us view the IRS the same way.
You bet we do. And they created that on purpose. They did. They created this intimidating notion, right? Like, and most of my clients will say they think of the IRS or the state tax agencies as some guy showing up on their doorstep wearing like a fedora and an overcoat with a gun and a badge. I'm taking your car. There is this ingrained fear that we have all been groomed with, right? To be afraid of the tax man. And they do that because we all volunteer our tax reportings every year. Now, stick with me on this one. This is kind of a deep dive thought process, okay? But our tax system is actually a voluntarily reported system. If it wasn't, we would all have an appointment at the federal and state government offices once a year where we bring all of our financial records and we set them on the desk and say, okay, here you go, IRS person, tell me how much tax I owe. Instead, we report it ourselves. And that's where the term voluntary comes into play. So if all of us said, well, IRS, we're not going to do that this year, they would be at a complete loss. So they have this conception that they've built up in our society of don't mess with us, we'll come after you. So it scares people into compliance with what we have to do every year. Interesting thought, huh?
Yeah, so because I hear what you're saying. The first word that comes up to my mind, and I know it's not a totally true word, but it's called voluntold, right?
Voluntold, I like that.
Yes, I'm volunteering, but I'm really being told what to do.
And exactly.
So we have that, like you said, we have that ingrained in us. So if it's really volunteer, but aren't they still going to come and knock on my door if I don't report it voluntarily?
So yes. So think about this. Think about how digital our entire world is now. Right. So when you work for somebody else and at the end of the year, they give you a W-2, right? And the W-2 reports how much they paid you and how much they took out of taxes. And you use that form to then compile your tax return. Well, for people who are self-employed, if they're doing contract work for other people, that's also reported on a 1099, and they get a copy of the 1099. Well, the government also gets a copy of the 1099. So if you don't do your tax return, they take all this reported financial activities, and it takes the IRS computer system about 3 to 4 years to catch up. But it matches what is reported in your name and social security number to what you report. And if it doesn't match up, or if you haven't filed a tax return, they will send you notices saying, we noticed you didn't file your tax return. And if you don't do it, we're going to estimate one for you, and you're not going to like it. Because they don't give you deductions. They tax you at the highest rate possible. And then they start collecting on that estimated balance owed. So yes, voluntold, totally appropriate for this.
So you made a statement about it not registering for about 3 to 4 years. And so now I understand why we start hearing about these celebrities being audited later on, like, hey, they did not report back in 2019. Well, who cares? It's 2024. Like,
right.
What does it really matter?
No, and that's the thing. So any company, any organization, any government is only as good as the database that they operate from, right? And if you think about it, how how many people are in the US? I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Millions,
Right.
right? So for every person who has any financial activities, the IRS may get 3 pieces of financial reporting on them. They may get 200 for each person. So if you think about the computer system processing all that and then matching it all, it
Right.
takes forever. It's an antiquated system.
Mhm.
Couple of years ago, 2 years ago, there was this big defund the IRS,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Big push for that. Well, that was in response to an act that gave the IRS billions of dollars to reinvest into their processes. It was after COVID.
Mhm.
Remember, our federal government's even shut down.
Mhm.
The IRS did as well. So they had all this stuff backed up. Their computer systems are out of date. They needed new training for their people.
Hmm.
And when you think about it, the money that, let's just talk about the IRS, right?
Mhm.
The money the IRS collects is the financial backing of everything done at our national level,
Mhm.
right? Our public road systems, our public school systems, our military defense.
Mhm.
So when they shut down during COVID, there was no money coming in,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And part of that contributed to where we are in our economy right now. We're sucking wind, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Right. Right.
But so a couple of years ago, after COVID, the IRS said, "Hey, look, we need billions of dollars to fix our infrastructure, right? Our IT is completely outdated."
Mhm.
And they got money and then it was taken away and then they got partial back. But that's what's going on right now at our federal government. They're really trying to beef up their IT structure to
Mm.
support all of this data coming in on all the taxpayers who are voluntold to file every year. Right? I mean, and this is the problem. We are dealing with an archaic system, and that's why you hear about celebrities. Well, they
Mhm.
didn't file properly in 2019, and now it's coming to a head.
Mm.
It's just taken the system so long to catch up.
So, at one particular time, we were told we need to keep 7 years of data. Does that still play? Like, do we still need to do that?
Yeah, 7 years. Here's the thing. So, a scanner, a desktop scanner,
Mm-hmm.
they're what, like 60, $70?
Yeah.
Scan your records.
Okay.
Scan your records and keep them on a thumb drive. Throw that thumb drive in a safe or a lockbox or something, and then keep it on your computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's like, "Oh, my computer crashed and I lost all my data." Well, when it comes to important financial records like this,
Mm-hmm.
save it on a thumb drive too. Put that
Mm-hmm.
thumb drive someplace safe. But 7 years is the minimum, I would say. If you're self-employed, I'd keep them for 10.
Okay. Okay.
But now that we've got, the ability to store it on a cloud and a thumb drive in our computer, you don't need to keep the paper copies. Just
Mm.
scan everything.
and I ask because I've heard recently where, hey, because we're all digital, that might not be necessary.
Mm,
And like you're stating, the organizations are, whether you are a subcontracted, contractor, and an employee, because they're sending out all that data anyway, you don't necessarily have to keep a record of that. So I just want to make sure that we were clear on that. I don't care what stage we're in. Should we keep these papers one way or another? Like you said, whether it is a hard copy or a soft copy. I just want to make sure that we were
yeah.
clear on that.
Yeah. 7 years is a great practice just for the common people. And if you're self-employed, keep them 10. It doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather you make it a little inconvenient for yourself at the time and have it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can always be like, "Oh yeah, IRS, something didn't add up on my tax return. Well, here's all my files
Mm-hmm.
right there." You know.
So you also made a statement of that, and I'm sorry, my mind went crazy when you said this, when you said that they're going to come knock on your door with their hat and their jacket. I don't know why. Again, I'm gonna show my age. I thought about Inspector Gadget. I don't know why. Like about.
No, I appreciate that. I do, and that is kind of it, like that, 50s fedora and the overcoat. Yeah.
But for those of us who may not know, will they actually come after us in that perspective? Because again, this is what is shown on TV. That helps to create that aura, like they're no nonsense, all that type of stuff. So is that a normal practice, or does it because, hey, I did make $1 million or something like that? Like, how should I even view that?
No, great question. So it's never going to be out of the blue somebody comes knocking on your door. I will tell you that. Before they get to that level, they have already sent you series of notices. Hey, taxpayer. It's like showing up in your mailbox and you open it and it's jumping out at you going, hey, it's the IRS here. Did you forget?
Right.
You owe us money?
Mm-hmm.
They try a lot of ways to get your attention, to inspire you to address it before they have to get somebody assigned to the case. So, and then, I will tell you, most clients who hire us, one of the first questions they inevitably ask is, am I going to go to prison? Am I going to go to jail over this? And I will tell you, every year, only about 500 people go to jail over taxes. Remember, what did they catch Al Capone on? It wasn't on his bootlegging. It wasn't on the prostitution rings. It was on his taxes. So that gives you an example. I mean, it's pretty egregious when it gets to the point that somebody is actually going to jail over taxes. They have had the IRS say, can you please, taxpayer, pay this debt? And the taxpayer said, piss off. Pardon my bluntness.
Right.
I'm not going to deal with that. And they push the IRS to the point where the IRS says, okay, fine, we've tried solving this. And I know it sounds funny, but the IRS is not a bunch of people with devil horns and pitchforks. They're just people doing a job, right? But if you're that adage, you catch more bees with honey than vinegar. Same thing here. If you're getting notices from the IRS or the state about a tax bill, don't be afraid to open them. Don't be afraid to call. At that point, you give up the power, right? There's a power seat in every relationship.
Right.
And if you hide from it, if you duck under your desk and say, I'm not going to pay attention to this, then they're going to say, okay, well, you're leaving me no choice but to be the aggressor. So if you've got a tax debt situation, don't let those fears and that mental image of the devil scare you away from being in control of what's happening.
So let's go all the way back to the very beginning of our conversation when I asked you this question of these boxing gloves. Because again, the idea was, hey, you're going to be in a fight. Like we have to fight with the IRS. But though now, as you're explaining it, it's not necessarily a fight. It's just more or less like, hey, let's just sit down and have a sandwich and talk.
It's a dance. It's a dance. And I'm really good at No, I have found that if you don't do anything, if you ignore the problem, if you ignore the notices you receive, the IRS will put their boxing gloves on.
Okay.
And it's usually at that point that somebody who's been ignoring the problem then hires somebody like me, a tax debt resolution expert, to step in. And we have to put on the boxing gloves in the beginning, like, no, back off, right? Now I'm involved. The taxpayer knows this is something that they can't keep ignoring. I'm going to work on a solution. I've been doing this for a long time. Odds are, if it's at the point where an individual is assigned to it, I've worked with thousands of people at the IRS over the years. And I inevitably, probably twice a month, I get a new client case and I call the revenue officer and they're like, Morgan, oh my gosh, how are you? I haven't talked to you in forever. Because these are all seasoned employees, right? And I speak with them the same way I'm talking to you right now.
Right.
Because I find that you get further with honey than vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, I do stand up for my clients' rights, and I'll box back. I'll throw a few jabs if I need to. But I find in most cases, after the initial aggression level is brought down,
Mm-hmm.
we work to a solution really, really well. And there's
Hmm.
always a solution. I've never had a
Hmm.
case in almost 25 years of doing this that we could not solve.
Hmm. You know, Morgan, I really appreciate you dispelling the notion that, they are evil, that they are this
Yeah,
big bad corporation that's ready to put me in jail because again, that's all you see, that's all you hear.
right.
That's the feeling that you get anytime someone says those three letters,
Yeah,
IRS. It could be something else. Like it could mean something totally different, but everybody relates IRS to that.
yeah.
So I thank you very much for giving us this information. Now, if someone needed to get more information, because I have a $5,000 tax debt thing that I don't know how to handle, and I'm too nervous to call them.
Mhm.
Um, where can they reach out to you, where you might be able to work on their behalf and things like that, or even just get more information?
Yeah, you bet. So our website has a ton of information. If somebody owes $5,000 to the IRS, you don't want to pay a professional to get involved.
Mm.
Buy a copy of my book. It'll walk you through how to handle that. Go on our website. I have a library of almost 100 blogs that touch on different topics.
Mm-hmm.
Go there, read through it, see if there's something. Now, as an individual, if you owe 30,000 or 50,000 or 150,000, you want to get a professional involved,
Hmm.
right? You're sitting down. I
Yeah.
had a client that was 80 related LLCs that combined owed over $30 million in payroll taxes. And I kept them out of jail, and I kept them out of
Wow.
the Department of Justice
Wow.
target sites. So, there's always a solution. You just need to know if you owe 5,000, don't pay somebody else to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Grab my book, it'll walk you through how to do it. If you owe as an individual, I'd say over 20,000, you should probably get somebody involved.
Um, First, Morgan, I have to say thank you very much for that. Your information, sharing your book, your website, and things like that. But I'm just blown of someone having over 5 LLCs. Like, how much brain capacity do they really have?
I know there was a joke made during one of our meetings that their parents gave one of the brothers a start your own LLC kit at Christmas, and he went hog wild with it.
Oh my gosh! Like, how in the
You
world?
know,
Like, and I think, and I just want to touch on this because of where it comes even to the IRS. You have to be able to trust people
yeah.
to run your organization, especially if you
Oof.
have that many, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, because of that trust or over trust, and we're involved in creating something new, chasing the newest thing, whatever it is, we can lose track of those things that are most important, i.e., we need to pay
Nope.
this money.
Well, and I will share this with you. Business owners, people who are self-employed, man, they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Their management of every dollar coming in is the difference between their employees getting paid every week or every other week.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difference of clients coming to them next month and keeping the business going. So when a business owner is faced with a decision of, let's say, paying a supplier
Mm-hmm.
to keep getting the materials needed to continue servicing clients, or paying the payroll taxes, it's a pretty easy decision for a
Right.
business owner to make, to pay
Right.
for the materials,
Right.
right? With the intention of, and the intention is always, I'll catch up next quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we've got this big contract coming up. If I can get that, I'll get enough money and then I'll pay this debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll get caught up. And unfortunately, it's a cycle that just keeps happening and happening and happening. And before you
Right.
know it, they owe $100,000 in unpaid payroll taxes. But no matter, there's always a solution. You just got to face it and say, okay, I can't let this go unanswered anymore.
But
Let me find a solution.
30 million though? 30
Oh, yeah.
Like how did you forget that many times?
Yeah,
But
no, it was,
I'm joking though.
no, I know, but believe it or not, there were very viable things happening.
Right.
Contracts that fell apart that they had already invested a bunch of time in, people who owed them money that filed bankruptcy and left them without being funded for work that they did. I mean, that happens.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And then the business owner who had all the employees that were doing all of the work, they have to then scramble to cover for that. We've had natural disasters decimate small businesses. We've had situations where the company was built around the owner and the owner ended up with a stroke and couldn't talk and couldn't do his work for 8 months. And everybody was just kind of keeping the business going. I mean, there is always some catalyst. It's never like a business owner wakes up one day and goes, you know what? I'm just going to stop paying payroll taxes. Forget them. They don't need it.
Right.
There's always some reason that we can point to that says this is what started it. And, for anybody who's ever had a debt, it is dang hard to claw yourself out of it. The great thing is there are programs in place that the IRS and the states have that will not leave you so far behind the 8 ball, always trying to catch up, right? There's strategies that we put in place to help get you in front of it and keep you in front of it.
Wow, Morgan, thank you. I appreciate. I mean, I know I wasn't trying to make light of the 30 million, but it just blew my mind because I know just with the one that I have, managing that alone, let alone, like I said, 5. Now you're talking about 30, 80. Like, wow, what in the world? But like I said, that's a lot of trust, and a lot of times we as entrepreneurs, we don't trust people enough. We hold on too tight. And even with that, when you're talking about this money piece, we don't always trust the right individuals to manage that either. Right. So that's the point I was pulling on was the trust, dependability, all that type of stuff. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. We've had a lot of cases where an office manager was trusted to handle the taxes and embezzled the money instead. And yeah, if you are a business owner, first of all, God bless you. Because unlike being an employee, when you're a business owner and you don't shut down at night. You don't shut down on the weekend. You can't go on vacation and not think about what's happening in the business. Whereas if you're an employee, you can, right?
Right.
You shut your computer down at the end of the day and go to your car and drive home. You don't think about it anymore.
Right.
Business owners are 100% married to their business. And I think business owners don't get enough kudos just across the board for having the backbone to do it.
Right.
And, I am the biggest champion for business owners and self-employed people because I know how hard it is.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Morgan, but I thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate the information you provided. And of course, your information is going to be in the show notes,
Fantastic.
So as Morgan said, if you're at that $30,000 mark, let alone 30 million, make sure you get a professional, so I appreciate that. Now, Morgan, I got to ask you the question before I let you go.
Okay, go for it.
I got you. So, would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Ooh, I'll tell you fork in the road.
Okay. And why a fork?
Because I only have one option that may have been better instead of 2. I don't beat myself up if I choose poorly. How about that one?
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay.
And that's short to the point, too.
Yeah, because then, if it's only one, 2 options, right? And I go right and I should have gone left. I'm like, well, it was a 50-50 shot. And then if I choose one of 3, then I'm like, well, wait a minute, did I end up with the best one? Well,
Mm-hmm.
what about the other
Mm-hmm.
two? There were two other options. Were they both worse than what I got? So that's my thought process. I'd rather beat myself up over one bad choice instead of two.
I understand that. I could appreciate that. But Morgan, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Maurice. It was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And of course, thank y'all for listening to That Would Never Work podcast, and I will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?